I'm Natalie Duval-Quatil, and I'm the director of the Certificate in Entrepreneurship and Innovation program. Is anyone in that program? Nobody, okay. Anybody familiar with entrepreneurship? Is anybody an entrepreneur? Parents who are entrepreneurs? Nope. Okay, and what year are you in? Freshmen? Most freshmen? Oh, okay. Have you heard of the program? Not even. You were so intent on getting into engineering or whatever your major is, you weren't looking at anything else, right? Okay, well, as soon as the technology works, so I can give you a little bit of background. So the program was started in like 2005 because the president at the time, Martin Jiske, felt that entrepreneurship education should be delivered to students in all majors. So historically, a lot of the entrepreneurship programs were only directed at business schools. But if you think about it, the people making stuff are often people in other disciplines, right? There are people in engineering, agriculture, even, you know, I mean, even if you're a photographer, you're creating a product or a service that has some value that you want to monetize. So, and it worked out great. We had a goal of having 1,000 students involved in 3 years at that time, which people thought was completely crazy. They didn't think we'd get students from all these disciplines to think that that would be useful to their careers. And now we have about 2,000 students enrolled in the program. And I think our biggest population is engineering, polytechnic, computer science or science, and I think then management. So, and obviously it's proportional to the enrollment of the schools. But all right, give me 1 second here while I get into my Microsoft. Okay, let's see if this magically does it. Yes. Oh gosh, of course. It wants to verify my identity, which hopefully I can do, but maybe, yeah. Now you have to get to classes much earlier to be able to present.
They're starting to do that with emails also now.
Yep. Why isn't this working? Oh. Okay, let's see here. Okay. Sorry. Finally, okay. Oops. What happened? Oh, I had it. What happened here? Okay, it's back. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Sorry, it's just really slow. Is that working? Let's see.
Or if I choose to start slideshow.
It's coming. Okay. All right, I'm just going to go like this. All right. Okay, it's not going to look beautiful, but we'll see. All right. Okay, so as I was saying, it's open all majors, and it's really made so that it fits into your major, right? It's not taking, typically for most majors, it's like a minor. You don't have to take 5 additional courses. You absolutely have to take our 2 core fundamentals courses. But it's really made, we know that students have very busy schedules, and it's really made to get woven into your major. So I talked a little bit about myself. So I do all kinds of, so in addition to being an administrator and running this program, I'm also a faculty member, and I do a lot of research related to entrepreneurship education and engineering. We've done some National Science Foundation studies on the impact of that. I teach courses on the graduate student who is here, on graduate technology commercialization, and some other things. But you can ask me questions if that's interesting. All right. So does anybody know what the difference is between an invention and an innovation? Just try. Somebody guess. What's the difference? Yes?
An invention is like a physical product, and innovation like more like a mental task.
Yeah, a lot of people think that way, yeah.
Invention is something that you're creating that's new. Innovation you're kind of adding on to, like an idea.
Yeah, that's true too. Anybody else want to try? All right. All right, so the big difference is we think of an invention because we have these, like pictures of scientists creating something, right? But an invention oftentimes is not carried out into practice, right? It never gets to the market. And that's the difference between an invention and an innovation. It's something that actually has some value that is captured in the market. Now, it can be social value, but typically we're talking about economic value. So, and it could be a number of things, right? It can be a process. It can be just new ways of doing things. But obviously, innovations used very widely. But one of the big criticisms is at the university is that we've got all these inventions sitting on shelves and nobody's working to bring them to the marketplace. And that's one of the reasons we have some programs like the National Science Foundation I-Corps program, and we have some on-campus programs to make professors or inventors here on campus think more about the commercial opportunities for their technologies. Okay, so here's just one definition. Research is the transformation of money into knowledge, right? Here at the university, we do a lot of research. We get a lot of money from the National Science Foundation or the National Institute of Health. Take that money, do research in it, and we write papers and we create knowledge and we teach you all about that knowledge. And innovation is the transformation of knowledge into money. Or like I said, social good, it can be as well. Okay. All right, this was just something we had put together for an article that talked about, we were looking at what students need to understand in this kind of innovation continuum. So probably if you're an engineering student, you're learning a lot about creativity and innovation, right? You're doing design, and we want you to be as creative and innovative as possible. So we kind of call those the innovation inputs. And if you look at entrepreneurship or intrapreneurship, many of our students aren't starting companies at 22 years old, right? Most of you, especially if you're in a technical field, you're going to go out and you're going to learn a lot about an industry. You're going to gain a lot of expertise. You're going to build a network. And that's what's going to allow you to think about, wow, that's an opportunity that somebody's not seizing. And I'm capable. And hopefully what we do in the program is we teach you enough of the process that if instead of just saying, oh, somebody should do that, you can say, oh, I could do this. I could seize this opportunity. And then we look kind of at management. So the entrepreneurship and the intrapreneurship is kind of capturing that value, and managing is kind of managing the process. All right, so definition of an entrepreneur. It's the person that can figure out, what do I have around me and what can I do with it? Who do I know? What knowledge do I have? how do I put together the money, the team, et cetera, to create this economic value. And as I said, oftentimes we always think of entrepreneurs as just starting a new business. Some people differentiate between entrepreneurship and small business. We don't in the program. We have people starting tech ventures as well as kind of more what we would consider small business, though I argue every company is a tech company right now, right? Even if you have a small business downtown, you're using technology to drive your sales and things like that. So what we refer to as entrepreneurship is driving growth or revitalizing mature businesses. All right, so what's the entrepreneurial process? So you've got these entrepreneurs. These are people who are willing to kind of step out of their, what's a typical position. They're willing to make a commitment. They're willing to take time out of, like I said, a traditional career. They may put some equity, some money into that. And most importantly, their time. So they're taking some risk. Innovation is these new products, these new methods that have to create value. None of this, you can't have an entrepreneurial business unless somebody wants that invention, right? So you have to have demand, and you have to have demand at a price that you can sell that product. There's plenty of demand, but if you can't sell it at a price anybody wants it, it's not a business. And then there's this whole notion of people who are successful as entrepreneurs or as business people who create wealth that they then re-inject into the system, oftentimes being angel investors in companies and things like that. So, all right, so why is this important today? I'm sure you all know you should all be what they call T-shaped, right? You need to have a strong expertise in your discipline, but also be kind of broad when it comes to professional skills, including communications, being able to work with people in other disciplines. It's great if you have some financial literacy. One of the things we found, we did some interviews with students who had done the entrepreneurship program that were out in the work world between 2 and 5 years, and some of the things they said were they felt they had an edge over their peers because they were able to work with people from other disciplines, that they could talk to customers. They felt that was giving them a leg up, and they were able to advance in the organization better because they had that literacy and that experience. Anyway, so this is just to say today it's kind of more important than ever. Years ago you could just do one thing in a company, but today companies want people who are able to kind of cross over, right? Have engineers who can talk to business people who can talk to technologists. Okay, so I'm just going to go over some of the kind of big ideas that we talk about in entrepreneurship classes. So, like I said, you don't have a company, you don't have a successful product unless you have a market, right? So one of the important subjects that we cover is doing market research and validating that research, because why waste all your money? And one thing is, people sometimes when they're in love with their ideas, they don't want to do the research because kind of you might find out it's not such a great idea, and we're just kind of psychologically attached to our ideas. So sometimes people will spend a lot more time than they should kind of dreaming about the business as opposed to really doing the due diligence and the research necessary. So that's to find out if anybody wants the product, how you'll distribute it, what the sales channel is. It helps you identify potential problems, right? Have you heard of minimal viable product? That notion, right? Why spend 3 years perfecting a product, but get a minimal viable product, get it out into the marketplace, get some feedback so you can pivot or you can make improvements quickly. And most importantly, you always need data to convince people to either join your team or to invest in your company. So this market research has a lot of purposes. So, and obviously it reduces risk, right? The more you know about the market, hopefully the product will sell itself if you've done your research properly. Right, so here's what I just said. You want to know enough about the products, how your products, services, features meet the customer needs and wants. And then you probably heard a lot the term business model a lot, and that's how do you do that profitably. All right, feasibility analysis is along the same lines. It's answering these questions. How are you going to get your product out in the market in a way that you can make money, that the whole system works, right? Because it's not just, you have to figure out how are you going to make it, where you're going to make it, who's going to sell it, and there are all kinds of costs and logistics involved in that, and that is what the feasibility analysis is all about. Okay, and your mom is not a valid test market, right? You always have to go to objective people. One of the premises of the program that I talked about that is for faculty and grad students or undergraduate students too is I-Core, and the premise of that is you have to do interviews with 100 people, 100 stakeholders, potential customers or people in the industry, and that's part of this 6-week program. And that's a lot of people, but you get a lot of valuable information, and people learn a lot about their technology and what next steps are. Okay, so business model, like I said, it's a ventures profit engine. So how does Amazon make money with the Kindle, for instance? Do you get this slide? How do they make money? Are they making it by selling Kindles? They're probably making some by now, right? Because they've sold a lot of Kindles, the technology's pretty mature. But what they're banking on is that you're going to buy a lot of books, right? And boy, they know how to trap you with getting books or using Audible and things like that. They're excellent at that. Okay, money is another thing, right? I mean, raising money, this is an example of what we talk about a lot at the university and what I referred to earlier. We have a lot of money for research at the university, so on the left. But in the middle we have what we call the Valley of Death, and that's what these programs I was talking about that help faculty learn about the commercial potential of their technology is, because there's no money for things like prototyping, right? Or doing this market research that I was talking about, which takes a lot of time and takes a lot of money. And when you're teaching a lot of classes or doing your research, you're not always freed up to do that type of thing. So the challenge is you need to get those prototypes, and you need to get that market data to be able to convince an investor that it's worth investing in that, which will then allow you to actually grow. So just something to think about in tech types of businesses. Money is usually essential for growth. Okay, sources of startup capital that we refer to often, friends and family, great source. You just don't want to, lose all your parents' retirement funds or things like that. Banks will only lend if you have collateral. What's collateral? It's something the bank can take if you don't pay your loan, right? So it's a building, it's assets. And the problem is with tech companies, oftentimes you don't have assets. So there's nothing for the bank to take, so banks won't typically lend money to tech companies. That's why they rely on angel investors, which are, like I said, typically wealthy people who have done well in business of some sort, or entrepreneurs, or venture capitalists who are typically more than $1 million, and they want a big, very high rate of return, typically within 5 or 7 years. Their goal is to invest in the company and then sell the company 5 or 7 years later when the value has gone up significantly. And then there are specialized funds. So like I said, the government wants you to start businesses often, like tech businesses. That's why they invest in these programs at universities to move that technology out into the marketplace. But there are all kinds of different sources of funding. Universities are typically very well, often have kind of startup seed funding. It gets harder kind of outside of this context. Okay. All right, communication is a huge aspect of entrepreneurship because, like I said, if you can't communicate the value of your product, it's going to be very difficult to convince people that they should work for you, oftentimes for not a lot of money maybe initially. It'll be difficult to convince customers that your product is of value. And sometimes we think that entrepreneurs, wow, Mark Zuckerberg, he was really lucky. He was sitting in his dorm room. He just came up with this idea, and it just kind of was a straight line. And we kind of hold up these figures as, I don't know, these kind of heroic people who just kind of, went from 0 to 100, and it doesn't seem like it was all that difficult. But having watched, hundreds probably of startups try to get off the ground here at the university, and granted, many very early stage companies where there's still a lot of risk. There's technology risk. There's, it's difficult getting team members to actually, or experts to actually work for no money. It's difficult to, predict a lot. There's a lot of, it's not a straight shot. There's a lot of pivoting and iteration, and you have to get all of these different things in line. People, advisors, money, intellectual property is another thing. Here at the university, obviously, we have a huge team of people who are protecting all the intellectual property that is created here, so patents, and they're trying to license that technology also. So typically, if there's patents that are created here at the university, there are kind of two ways it could go. You can either license that technology to a company, an existing company, or if it's appropriate, take it and try to do a startup with it. So, but yeah, so it's not easy, depending on what you're in, and but that's why you have to do your research. Okay. So this is a little bit about entrepreneurial thinking. There's been a lot of talk about entrepreneurial mindset lately, and that all students should have an entrepreneurial mindset. So I just like to compare this, managers and entrepreneurs sometimes. Managers, it's always about kind of optimizing existing areas. You're given a budget at the beginning of a year, and you create a plan of how you're going to spend that budget, right? An entrepreneur, it's very different. They have a plan, but they don't necessarily have the resources, right? So it requires creating the plan and then kind of going out and incrementally getting those resources. So managers launch projects all at once. Entrepreneurs do things in short stages. Managers are kind of managing their career, right? They say, I'm at level 1, then I wait 2 years, I can get to a next level. Entrepreneurs, not that mindset at all. That's very different. And managers, kind of the mindset, and obviously this is gross generalization, but it's really about building security, and entrepreneurs typically about kind of creating personal wealth, or it can be creating a certain type of lifestyle, right? Just not having to work for corporate America, being able to kind of have more agency in what you do. And there's plenty of this on TikTok now, right? Because everybody's leaving corporate America. It's terrible, right? So the way I like to think about this is, somebody who thinks in this kind of causal, more managerial way. The example is, you're working at a restaurant, the owner gives you a menu, and then you go out and do all the shopping to create that menu. If you have a more effectual or entrepreneurial mindset, it's more look in the fridge and then figure out what can I make with what I already have. It's assembling those resources. Okay, so an entrepreneurial team, obviously you've got the founders who bring either the technical and business expertise. You typically have a lot of advisors. You're always talking to people and seeking advice. So probably not in the early stage, you probably don't have a board of advisors, but if you're getting some traction, you will. And if it's a tech company, you probably have a scientific board as well. There are many informal advisors here at the university. It's a great place to get tons of advice. We have business incubator staff. We've got all of our faculty are successful entrepreneurs, so they are great mentors and people who can help you navigate entrepreneurship or life or business as well. Then service providers like attorneys, accountants, bankers, depending on what your needs are. And like I said, investors, and you always want to seek out people with a good track record. Okay, this is just to demonstrate the importance of a team and who you align yourself with. I prefer an outstanding entrepreneurial team with an average idea over an average team with an outstanding idea. Okay, so a little bit about the program. So we're on the curricular side. There are a lot of other activities. Have you heard of the Anvil? Or it's a student organization. There's a Purdue Foundry. Like I said, if you actually have a business, they can help you with connections, or if you have an idea, they have some workshops that you can kind of work through your idea, but you can also do that in classes. And then there are a number of funds and things like that that they have as companies get more traction. So, like I said, the certificate program is like a minor, offered to students in all majors. Now we have at least 200, if you count summer, enrolled each year. That's something I should mention. If this is interesting to you, obviously we have like 20 in-person classes happening every semester, but we also have online summer classes. So a lot of students can knock out the entire certificate in the summer by taking 2 of the core online classes. So that's worth looking at. It might, it's not a bad credential to have on your resume. We're among the largest programs in the country, but we keep the class sizes small. Typically, it's not over 45 students because we want it to be active learning, interdisciplinary teamwork, and we've been able to keep the classes that small. We're housed over in the Burton Morgan Center for Entrepreneurship in Discovery Park on the 2nd floor. So if you ever want to meet with anybody, we have an academic advisor who works with all your academic advisors. If you're worried about fitting this in, you can come sit down with her and she'll kind of map out the path with you. And we're administered through the Office of the Provost. We're in the Entrepreneurship Center, but because we're a cross-campus program, we're not housed in one school, and we're offered through the Office of the Provost. So our main objectives, like I said, we know not every student is going to go out and start something at 22. That's not the expectation. If you want to, great. But realistically, the average age of entrepreneurs is in their 40s once they've gained that experience. Granted, we have lots of outliers. But if you're talking about, kind of, across all industries and things like that. But it's really giving you all that business literacy that you need. It's developing those leadership and communication skills that can be useful in every job. And hopefully what we're doing is enhancing your job prospects and choices. Like I said, we offer a lot of, I'll skip over this, but lots of majors you can see. We've had, 170 majors. So it is one place where you can actually, if you're tired of your academic discipline and being with all very like-minded students, you can go meet some other people. And that is one of the things when we look at our data, one of the things students like the most is to be in an interdisciplinary class with motivated students, because nobody has to do that. So typically the students are somewhat motivated. All right. So as I said, I like to show this slide because sometimes people confound what our purpose is. Our purpose is to educate students, and whether it's for the short term using entrepreneurship or the long term, a lot of the business incubation types of activities at the university are, you're going to start a business in the next 6 months or a year, and you need help immediately. All right, so I said very flexible. At the end, you get a diploma-like certificate at graduation. You'll basically kind of get two diplomas to hang on your wall. So the first 2 classes, like I said, everybody has to take, and those are the ones that are offered in the summer as well. Now, if you're interested in social ventures, we have one social entrepreneurship class, which you can take instead of